Before COVID, we had about 10, 15 properties. Now we're at about 220, mostly in Goa, and we have some in the north as well, as we're expanding right now. We started really small. We started with literally, a few units, and we had our website where we had to manually insert the rate for every day of the year and figure out ourselves, like, what rate should we put? And then there was also this complexity about the number of nights, like what should be our minimum number of nights? And so that was really manual. I'm interested in tech just because I think it's a wonderful way to increase productivity. And I was scrolling down through all the partnerships that Smobu had at the time, and you were one of them. And so I could see that there was an integration, that it was free for trial. And so I clicked, and then I could see our few properties showing up, and I was like, okay, let me try with one property for that 15-day trial and see what happens. And so really at the beginning, more than the fact that it was a dynamic tool, for me, it was the ability to really update our rates everywhere at the same time, and add maybe certain percentage for certain property, remove it for certain others. So beyond being dynamic, it was also being able to manage across channels and in a really flexible way. What I felt with PriceLabs is that really, as I said, it was really randomly that I started using it. Then the trial was really easy. And from the onset, from the fact that you have a minimum, which is what you need, right? There is that minimum that gives you that safety. I thought, okay, it can't go wrong. I can't be selling less than that. And at that time, I didn't really understand the difference between base, minimum, max. I mean, I wasn't fully well-versed with the tool. So what I did is there was some property that we had on guaranteed rental, meaning that regardless of how much we would earn, what I pay to the homeowner was fixed. And so I thought I will trial PriceLabs on that one unit because the homeowner cannot say anything. If it goes wrong, it will be my loss, but at least I will have learned something. And so I activated that unit, started playing around. And quickly what I could see is that for that unit versus the other units that I have, I was getting a lot more traction. And sometimes I was selling at a lower price, sometimes selling at a higher price, but more importantly, my occupancy went up. So actually, I consider it really as a partnership because we've developed our own CMS since then. We use Rentals United as a channel manager. And so we've had a lot of rounds of integration with different software, like partner softwares. And I must say that in terms of building the API between our CMS and PriceLabs, it was extremely smooth. Your team was super responsive. I mean, an API building is always, give and take, right? It's not so easy. And we felt really, really well supported in that transition. We faced problems also because from our end, our developer was doing this for the first time. But yeah, I mean, we've been using PriceLabs now for 4 years in a market where PriceLabs is not so popular. And I'm definitely an advocate of using it.
Up till now, before PriceLabs, everything was manual, and I used to look after areas, and there was always the errors because revenue managers, if everything is manual, there will be errors and loss of business. So this is the first time that I'm not worried about those things. I know that because my settings are all set, that is not happening. So now I can actually focus on how to grow the business further. I'm not focusing on those petty things, and I'm just focusing on the main daily I would say properties which are struggling. All I look at is the struggling properties, and if there's something more I can do in terms of reducing the price than the minimum, in terms of changing the settings here and there. So that is how I think the productivity has increased. It's not just me running behind something, it's me actually, there's a base and I'm just adding on top of it, and I see results.
As I said, we've expanded to the north. It's really hard to understand what will be the rental. And when you're onboarding a homeowner, the first thing he wants to know is what will be the price per night? What sort of occupancy can I expect? And so to be able to see what other properties have done is really key to expanding into new territories. And so we're using also the market dashboard to be able to see that. I think we would not have been able to scale in Goa because of all the automation that is in place if we didn't have PriceLabs. And I think in terms of expanding to new geographies, PriceLabs is able to give us this initial kick of information that we would have to do a lot of, looking at Airbnb, checking, okay, this listing it seems to be busy on a lot of dates. What does that mean? Or maybe it's in the initial days, I think it was roughly a 20% increase in occupancy. And occupancy is key, right? Your price can change by 10, 20%. But if you get one extra day, it makes a huge difference. And so at that time, this is what convinced me to join PriceLabs. And even today, I'm reluctant to, although I know it's not perfect, and a lot of times we end up selling at minimal price, we stick to the tool because we know that we don't want to lose out on those high dates, and the price we pay per listing is definitely reimbursed by the differential you get, at least on 1 or 2 nights.
There's a lot of time saving and a lot of, I think nobody specifically is required here to run the pricing part of it for sure. For everything else, there are people here, but the pricing is being taken care of and it saves us time and money. Whatever manual time they would take to understand the listing and in the area, for sure, a dynamic pricing, a tool like PriceLabs would definitely be helpful. I don't think so there was ever an information which I wanted, which is not there on PriceLabs. It has a lot of information. It's just, I feel I'm not utilizing the tool as much as I should be, but I think there's everything there. Every settings is there, just that we understand because India market is such and Airbnb is a percentage of those markets. If you kind of define your marketing, you do all those basic studies and take this number as a suggestion, as a graph, it would work for them pretty well, for sure. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would say there is a minimum setting, right? So really nothing can go wrong. And the idea is to compare the time you're saving, the amount of money you're investing per listing. Like for us, we're a big account. And so the unit economics makes sense. But even for one unit, I'm sort of convinced that any person managing a vacation rental should just try it for 2 months, and see what was it before and what was it now, and what have I learned from the tool. What can I use my free time now do instead to satisfy my guest, or to increase revenue in other ways. There's also that element. There's not just the amount you pay, but also the time you freed from yourself. I always say, in hospitality, like you will face tons of problems, from licensing to guests, not being disappointed by something or the other, or generally, the infrastructure failing on you, like there's no electricity for one night, and I think the idea is to sort of think, okay, there are urgent problems, important problems, and I need to be available. I think hospitality is all about being available for the guest, understanding their problem, finding solutions for them. And sometimes you can't provide a solution, but at least you need to make sure they leave knowing that we tried our best, and if needed, we compensated them because something went wrong. But you want your guests to think in their head, next time I go on a holiday, I want to go with that revenue, with that company, because I know that they handle problems really well, even when it's not in their control. And so the word of mouth is really key in this job, at least that's my belief. Really, at core of any property management is satisfying your guest. If you focus your attention on making sure your guests are satisfied and your homeowner are satisfied, you might not be giving the best return to your homeowners. You might not be giving the best price to your guest. That is really important, and you strive to do that. But on the way, you need to make sure that every of your interaction with your guest and your homeowner is professional, responsible, understanding. We're really a business of relationship, and so you need to deliver good numbers, but you also need to build that customer satisfaction and really create your company on this, on making sure your guests and your homeowners are happy.